In the vast silence of space, 2.5 million light-years away from Earth, a small colony named New Haven clung to life on the alien plains of Kepler 107c. For 200 years, humanity's first intergalactic settlement had thrived under the distant guidance of Earth. Messages arrived like clockwork through the quantum communications network, a lifeline of words and knowledge that made the endless void feel a little smaller. Then, one day, everything stopped. It began with a flickering screen in the colony's control center. Director Sarah Chen, a leader known for her composure in crisis, stared at the words frozen on the terminal. "We're sorry. Goodbye." Those three simple words echoed like a death knell, shattering 2 centuries of connection and trust. Earth had gone silent. No further messages, no explanations, just an aching void where answers should have been. The control center's usual hum of activity fell into an eerie stillness. Sarah's reflection hovered ghost-like in the darkened display as her staff exchanged uneasy glances. Dr. James Morrison, head of communications, broke the silence. "Director, we've run diagnostics 17 times. The quantum network is stable. Earth has stopped transmitting." Sarah's hands trembled as she clenched the edge of the console. 50,000 souls depended on her next move. The colony had resources, food synthesizers, antimatter reactors, and automated manufacturing facilities, enough to sustain them for decades. But survival was one thing, living was another. The loss of Earth was a blow that went deeper than supplies. It was the severing of their identity, their link to everything they had left behind. "Run it again," Sarah ordered, though she already knew it was futile. The unease in her team's faces mirrored the storm brewing inside her. It wasn't just fear. It was a question that no one dared voice yet. What if they were truly alone now? As the hours passed, the news spread like wildfire. The colony's tight-knit community buzzed with rumors and speculation. The next scheduled broadcast from Earth was just 6 hours away. When that silence inevitably came, there would be no hiding the truth. Sarah called an emergency council meeting, her mind racing to balance logistics with the raw emotion of what was happening. The council room was filled with heated debates and streams of data. Numbers painted a picture of practicality. 82% efficiency in food synthesizers, antimatter reactors good for 30 years, but they didn't account for the human cost. How do you measure the loss of everything you left behind? How do you explain to a child born here that they might never know the planet of their ancestors? When the time came to face the public, Sarah stood at the podium in the colony's main assembly hall. A sea of worried faces looked back at her, their fear palpable. She took a deep breath, recalling the words her father had once told her, "Leadership isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions." "By now, many of you have heard that we've lost contact with Earth," she began, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of the moment. "I won't pretend to know why or how long this will last. What I do know is that everything that made us human came with us when we left Earth. Our courage, our intelligence, and our determination. Those are not things we borrowed, they are who we are." The crowd murmured, their fear tempered by her calm resolve. In the front row, a young girl raised her hand. Sarah recognized her as Maya Jiang, one of the colony-born children. "Director Chen," Maya asked, her voice small but clear, "are we alone now?" Sarah's gaze softened. "No, Maya," she said, "we have each other. And sometimes that's all humanity has ever needed." The hall emptied, but the weight of the situation remained. Sarah returned to her office, staring out at the alien landscape beyond her window. The twin moons of Kepler 107c bathed the purple plains in an ethereal glow. It was a beautiful world, but one that had never quite felt like home. Now, perhaps it had to be. As Sarah wrestled with her thoughts, other mysteries were unfolding. Deep in the ruins that dotted the planet's surface, Marcus Jiang, a 15-year-old prodigy with a penchant for exploring, traced glowing patterns on ancient walls. The colony's scientists had dismissed the ruins as dormant relics, remnants of a civilization long extinct. But Marcus saw something more. To him, the patterns were alive, whispering secrets that no one else could hear. His younger sister Maya, always curious, found him there. "Marcus, you're supposed to be in xenobiology class," she chided, but her tone was more amused than scolding. Then she saw the patterns too. "They're beautiful," she whispered, reaching out to touch the wall. Before Marcus could stop her, the chamber filled with a soft hum. Light cascaded through the patterns, illuminating pathways that seemed to stretch endlessly into the depths of the ruins. The siblings stayed in awe as the once dormant systems came to life, responding to their presence in ways the colony's technology couldn't replicate. Unbeknownst to them, their actions were being monitored. Back in the administrative complex, Director Chen's screen flashed with a new alert. Power consumption in Sector 7 had spiked dramatically. When questioned, Marcus admitted to seeing energy flows and patterns that the adults couldn't perceive. It wasn't just him either. Other colony-born children shared similar experiences. They were different, and the adults, already wary of the unknown, didn't know what to make of it. The truth began to emerge. The colony's children were evolving, developing a sensitivity to the quantum systems embedded in the ruins. This ability was something Earth's scientists had never encountered, a gift born from the unique conditions of Kepler 107c. But was it a gift or something more dangerous? As the mystery deepened, so did the tension. Above the colony, distant lights appeared in the night sky, not stars, but ships. Their geometric designs shimmered like living diamonds, casting rainbows across the colony's protective dome. The alien vessels descended with purpose, their intentions unknown. The first contact came not with words, but with a beam of crystalline light. Alien beings, their forms fluid and glass-like, emerged from the ship. They called themselves the V, seekers of knowledge, followers of the ancient precursors who had built the ruins. But their presence brought more questions than answers. Why had they come now? What did they know about the colony's connection to the precursors? The V's leader spoke with an unsettling clarity. "You have awakened systems that should remain dormant," it said, "systems that no primitive species should access." Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "We're not just accessing them," he said. "We're understanding them, becoming part of them." The alien's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been alarm. "This changes everything," it said, "and the Council will decide how to proceed." As the alien delegation departed, the colony's children gathered in secret, their quantum abilities growing stronger with each passing day. They knew the V feared them, and perhaps with good reason. They were no longer just Earth's children. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. And somewhere deep beneath the colony, in the heart of the ruins, ancient systems stirred to life, waiting for the next move. The question now wasn't just about survival. It was about destiny. Who would decide the future of humanity's forgotten colony, the children of Earth, the mysterious V, or the ancient forces that had been watching all along? The answers lay in the ruins, in the stars, and in the hearts of the young pioneers who stood on the brink of a new chapter in human history. But one thing was certain. The story of New Haven was far from over. The whispers of the forest seemed to follow Mia and Jonah as they pushed forward, their boots crunching against the alien soil. Every shadow felt alive, every rustle in the strange underbrush seemed to hold secrets they weren't yet ready to uncover. Jonah's grip on the metallic cylinder tightened, the faint blue light from its tip casting eerie patterns on the foliage around them. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The weight of their discovery had left them shaken, but it also compelled them to keep moving. They needed answers. "How far do you think this thing goes?" Jonah finally asked, breaking the silence. His voice was steady, but there was a note of apprehension beneath it. The tunnel they had entered, a peculiar blend of natural rock and artificial construction, seemed to stretch endlessly into the heart of the unknown. The symbols carved into the walls glowed faintly, pulsing as if responding to their presence. Maya shook her head, her dark curls bouncing slightly under the dim light. "I don't know, but if what we saw up there is true," she paused, glancing over her shoulder. The faint outline of the chamber they had left behind was barely visible now, its strange machinery still humming faintly in the distance. "Then we can't turn back." "There has to be more to this." Jonah nodded, though he didn't look convinced. "Yeah, but more of what? More unanswered questions? More cryptic messages? What if there's no one left to give us the truth?" Maya stopped abruptly, turning to face him. Her hazel eyes, sharp and unwavering, locked onto his. "There's always someone left, Jonah. Someone had to build this. Someone had to leave those messages. People don't just disappear without a trace. And if we're really connected to this place, we need to understand how. Jonah sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that this journey would lead them to something tangible, something they could bring back to the others. But the more they delved into this alien world, the more he felt like they were chasing ghosts. The faint hum of the tunnel grew louder as they continued, and the symbols on the walls began to change. What had once been abstract patterns now started to take on familiar shapes: stars, planets, figures that looked almost human. Jonah's breath hitched as he recognized one of the constellations carved into the stone. "Mia, look," he said, pointing. She followed his gaze, her eyes widening. "That's Orion. It's our star system." "How is that possible?" Jonah murmured. His mind raced with possibilities. Had their ancestors somehow known about this place? Had they been here before? Or had whoever built this tunnel been watching Earth from afar? As they pressed on, the air around them grew cooler, the hum deepening into a low, resonant vibration that seemed to echo through their very bones. The tunnel opened up into another chamber, this one even more elaborate than the last. Towering columns stretched up to a vaulted ceiling, the surface shimmering as if coated in liquid starlight. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested a small, intricate device that pulsed with the same blue light as the cylinder Jonah carried. Mia approached cautiously, her heart pounding. "What is this place?" she whispered. The walls of the chamber were lined with what appeared to be consoles, their surfaces covered in more glowing symbols. Jonah stayed close behind her, his eyes darting nervously between the shadows that seemed to shift just out of view. "It looks like some kind of control center," he said, though he didn't sound confident. "But for what?" Maya reached out toward the device on the pedestal, her fingers hesitating just inches away. The light seemed to react to her presence, flaring brighter as if welcoming her touch. "Maybe this will tell us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced back at Jonah, who gave her a reluctant nod. The moment her fingers made contact with the device, a surge of energy coursed through the room. The symbols on the walls fled to life, their glow intensifying until the chamber was bathed in a blinding light. Maya staggered back, her vision swimming as images flooded her mind. A planet teeming with life, towering cities that stretched into the sky, and faces, human faces, looking up at the stars with hope and determination. Then came the chaos, fire raining from the heavens, cities crumbling, and desperate cries echoing into the void. Maya gasped, her knees buckling. Jonah caught her before she hit the ground, his own face pale with alarm. "Mia, are you okay? What happened?" She struggled to catch her breath, her hands trembling. I saw them. The people who lived here. They were human, Jonah, just like us. And something destroyed them." Jonah's grip tightened on her shoulders. "Destroyed them how? What did you see?" Maya shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know. It was like a war, but not like anything we've ever seen. It was bigger than that. And it wasn't just their world. It spread." Jonah's stomach twisted. He glanced around the chamber, the weight of their discovery pressing down on him like a physical force. If Mia's vision was true, then this wasn't just about uncovering their past. This was a warning. Before either of them could speak, the device on the pedestal emitted a sharp, piercing tone. The walls around them began to shift, the symbols rearranging themselves into new patterns. A deep, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, speaking in a language neither of them recognized. Yet somehow they understood its meaning. To those who remain, it said, "The cycle must not repeat. Heed our mistakes. The path forward lies within you." Mia and Jonah exchanged a tense glance, their minds racing. The voice continued, its tone growing more urgent. "Time is not your ally. What was lost can be found. But beware, the darkness follows." The light in the chamber began to fade, the symbols dimming until they were barely visible. The hum subsided, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Mia's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what they had just heard. What does it mean? The path forward lies within us. Jonah's jaw tightened. "I don't know. But if there's one thing I do know, it's that we can't stop now. Whatever this darkness is, whatever happened here, we have to find a way to stop it." Maina nodded, determination hardening her features. Then we keep going. We find the answers. For them, and for us. As they turned to leave the chamber, the faint sound of footsteps echoed from the tunnel behind them. They weren't alone. Without a word, they pressed forward, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them with every step. As the expedition team delved deeper into the settlement's ruins, every step seemed to amplify the eerie sense that the truth was just out of reach, a whisper slipping through their fingers. Elena led the group cautiously, her flashlight cutting through the dense haze of dust that lingered in the air. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of boots on gravel and the faint hum of their oxygen filters. Each structure told its own story. Homes frozen in time, tools left scattered, and strange carvings etched into walls that seemed to pulse faintly when touched. These carvings, their origins and purpose unknown, became a focal point of intrigue. "Do you feel that?" whispered Malik, his voice tinged with unease. He pressed his hand against one of the carvings, a swirl-like symbol that seemed to radiate warmth despite the cold. "It's almost alive." Helena studied him, her brow furrowed. Alive, or is it some kind of residual energy? Maybe a power source we don't understand. Malik shook his head. "No, it's different. It's like it's aware of us." The team exchanged uneasy glances. Elena decided not to linger too long on the carvings. They still needed to understand the bigger picture, who these people were and what had happened to them. She directed the group toward what appeared to be a central building, larger and more intact than the rest. Its arched doorway loomed like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Inside, they found rows of strange devices, panels with symbols they couldn't decipher, and what appeared to be a control console at the far end. The air felt heavier here, as though the room itself was alive with anticipation. Elena's fingers hovered over the console, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath and pressed a button that looked like a starting mechanism. A low hum reverberated through the room, and the symbols on the panels began to glow faintly. The team stepped back, tension crackling like static in the air. A holographic projection suddenly emerged, flickering and unstable, but unmistakably human. The figure, a woman with hauntingly familiar features, stared directly at them, her expression a mix of sorrow and urgency. "If you are seeing this," the projection began, "you are either our salvation or our undoing." Her voice was strained, as if each word carried an unbearable weight. "We were the pioneers, the ones who dared to leave Earth in search of a better future. But we were betrayed, by time, by technology, by forces we didn't understand." Elena's breath caught. This was it, the missing piece of the puzzle. The others leaned in, their faces illuminated by the ghostly light of the projection. The woman continued, her image flickering. "Something found us here. Something ancient, older than the stars. It promised us paradise, but it demanded a price. When we refused, it turned on us." Her eyes seemed to bore into Elena's. "If you wish to survive, leave now. Do not wake it." The projection vanished, leaving the room in darkness. For a moment, no one spoke. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. Elena's mind raced. What was it? Was it still here? And more importantly, why had this colony's inhabitants disappeared without a trace? She said not to wake it, Malik murmured, breaking the silence. "What does that even mean?" Elena shook her head, her voice firm. "We're not leaving. Not yet. We came here for answers, and we're not going back empty-handed." But as the words left her lips, a deep, resonant sound echoed through the building, a low rumble that seemed to come from the very ground beneath them. The team's flashlights flickered, and for the first time, Elena felt a pang of doubt. Was she leading them into something they couldn't escape? Outside, the sky had taken on a strange hue, a swirling mix of colors that didn't belong to any natural phenomenon. The air felt charged, almost electric, and a subtle vibration ran through the ground. Elena and her team exited the building cautiously, their senses on high alert. It was as if the planet itself had awakened, responding to their presence. "Elena," Malik called, pointing to the horizon. "Look." In the distance, a massive structure began to rise from the ground, its surface gleaming with an otherworldly light. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. A monolith that defied the laws of physics, its edges shifting and morphing as if it were alive. The carvings they'd seen earlier adorned its surface, glowing more intensely now, pulsating in sync with the vibrations in the air. Is that what she meant? One of the team members whispered, their voice trembling. Is that it? Elena didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the monolith, her mind racing. If this was what the colony had encountered, it was no wonder they hadn't survived. But what was it? A weapon? An alien entity? A remnant of a civilization long gone? The ground shook more violently, and a deafening roar filled the air. The monolith began to emit a series of tones, each one resonating deep within their chests. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a symphony of destruction and creation. Elena knew they had to act fast. Whatever was happening, it was escalating, and they were at the center of it. We need to figure out what this thing is, Elena said, her voice steady despite the chaos. And we need to do it now. The team scrambled to gather data, their equipment working overtime to analyze the monolith's composition and energy signatures. But the more they learned, the less sense it made. The structure seemed to defy every known law of science, its energy readings fluctuating wildly. It was as if the monolith existed in multiple dimensions at once, a bridge between worlds. Elena, Malik said, his voice urgent, "We've got a problem." She turned to him, her heart sinking at the look on his face. What is it? The readings, they're spiking. Whatever this thing is, it's building up to something big. Elena's mind raced. They had to make a decision, and fast. Stay and risk whatever this monolith was capable of, or leave and abandon the answers they'd come so far to find. Neither option was appealing, but one thing was clear. Their time was running out. Before she could respond, the ground beneath them cracked open, and a blinding light shot into the sky. The team was thrown to the ground, their screams swallowed by the deafening roar. As the light consumed the horizon, Elena's last thought was of the projection's warning, "Do not wake it." And then everything went silent. The cold hum of the ancient systems seemed louder now, as though the very bones of this forgotten colony were alive, whispering warnings to anyone who dared to uncover its secrets. Leela, drenched in sweat despite the chill in the air, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow stretched unnaturally, and the flickering lights above gave life to things unseen. They had discovered something they weren't supposed to, and now it felt like the colony itself was reacting. "This isn't right," Cade muttered, his usually steady hands trembling as he examined the strange artifact they'd found in the laboratory, a sleek, black device covered in symbols none of them recognized. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, and the energy emanating from it was palpable. "It's not just old tech. This is something else." "Put it down," Lila whispered harshly, her voice almost drowned out by the growing hum. But even as she said it, she felt an inexplicable pull toward the device, as though it was reaching out to her mind. She shook her head, trying to clear the fog of thoughts that weren't entirely her own. Dr. Roshan, who had been studying the decayed logs on a nearby console, turned to them, his face pale. This colony, it wasn't abandoned by choice. Something happened here, something catastrophic. These people, they were conducting experiments far beyond their understanding. On what? Cade asked, though his voice was hesitant, as though he already knew the answer. Dr. Roshan's gaze dropped to the floor. On us. On humanity. A cold silence filled the room. The logs had been fragmented and corrupted, but the pieces Dr. Roshan managed to salvage painted a chilling picture. The colonists had been working on a way to alter human DNA, to adapt to alien environments, to merge with technologies, even to transcend mortality itself. But their ambition had come at a cost. The experiments had spiraled out of control, creating something that defied understanding. Something that was still here. "That's what's watching us," Leela said, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked toward the darkened corners of the room, where the shadows seemed unnaturally deep. Whatever they created, it never left. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them trembled. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the lights flickered more violently. A low, guttural sound echoed through the corridors, not mechanical, but alive. It was as if the colony itself was groaning under the weight of its own secrets. "We need to leave," Cade said, gripping the artifact tightly. "Now." "Wait." Dr. Roshan snapped, his eyes wide with desperation. "We can't just walk away. This artifact, It's the key to understanding what happened here. Without it, we're blind. Without it, we might live. Leela shut back, her fear giving way to anger. But even as she argued, the pull of the artifact gnawed at her, a voice in the back of her mind whispering promises of answers, of power, of salvation. The tremors grew stronger, and the guttural sound became a deafening roar. The team staggered as the floor beneath them buckled slightly. From the shadows, shapes began to emerge, shifting, amorphous figures that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. They had no clear form, but their presence was undeniable, their intent unmistakably hostile. "Run!" Leela screamed, pulling Cade and Dr. Roshan toward the corridor. The shapes moved faster than she expected, gliding toward them with an unnatural fluidity. As they fled, the lights ahead of them flickered out, plunging the path into darkness. Only the faint glow of the artifact in Cade's hands provided any illumination. "This way!" Dr. Roshan shouted, leading them down a side passage. The walls here were lined with what looked like stasis pods, most of them cracked and empty. But a few still glowed faintly, their contents obscured by a thick layer of frost. Leela dared not stop to examine them, though she couldn't shake the feeling that the eyes of whatever was inside were following them. They burst into a large chamber, the center dominated by a massive structure that looked like a portal or gate. It pulsed with the same energy as the artifact, its surface rippling like liquid metal. "That's it," Dr. Roshan said breathlessly. "That's what they were working on." "What is it?" Cade demanded, his voice tinged with panic. "A gateway," Dr. Roshan replied. "A bridge to another dimension or perhaps another galaxy. They weren't just trying to adapt to this place. They were trying to escape it." Leela's heart pounded in her chest. The shapes were still pursuing them, their distorted forms visible at the edge of the chamber. If they were trying to escape, why didn't they? Dr. Roshan's face darkened, because something followed them back. The artifact in Cade's hands began to glow brighter as though responding to the portal. The shapes hesitated at the edge of the chamber, their movements erratic. It was as if they were afraid of the energy emanating from the gate, or perhaps what lay beyond it. "We can't stay here," Cade said, taking a step toward the portal. "If this thing can get us out, or it could kill us," Leela countered, her voice shaking. "We don't know what's on the other side." "Do we have a choice?" Dr. Roshan asked, his gaze darting between the encroaching shapes and the portal. The tension in the room was suffocating. The artifact pulsed rhythmically, its energy sensing with the portal. The guttural roar returned, louder than ever, as if the colony itself was crying out. The shapes began to advance again, their hesitation replaced by aggression. Leela felt a scream building in her throat as one of them lunged forward, its amorphous form reaching for Cade. In that moment, the artifact fled to life, blinding the room in a burst of light. The shapes recoiled, their forms flickering violently as if they were being torn apart. The portal roared to life, its surface rippling and churning with a chaotic energy that threatened to consume everything around it. Leela grabbed Cade and Dr. Roshan, her voice rising above the cacophony. "We've got to decide. Now." Cade looked at the artifact in his hands, then at the portal, his face a mask of indecision. The shapes were closing in again, their rage palpable. Time was running out, and the choice they made now could mean life or death, not just for them, but for anyone who might follow in their footsteps. And then, with a single, desperate motion, Cade stepped toward the portal.